A week later, I found out I did not have cancer. I had to have an operation, and 6 weeks to that date, you can fly. So that was the day that I flew out on a one-way ticket to America with all of my bags and no idea what I was going to do, nowhere to live.
Now, how did you get this role in the first place? Because you came here to be a screenwriter, isn't that right?
I did.
So you're just like writing and then someone said audition for this, or what?
Well, if we go back 10 years, I was an English teacher who was approached by a producer in a pub who said that he thought I was, we started a conversation, then he said he thought I was funny, and there was this huge national audition going for this big hosting job in the UK, and I was like, oh no, thank you, I'm happy in my career.
Teaching high school English? Or
I was teaching English as a foreign language, and I was teaching high school English.
Okay.
And so in two separate schools I was working at the time, and I was like, oh no, thank you, I think show business is a bit trivial and pathetic, and full of boring, strange people. I wasn't entirely wrong. Some of that is true, but then he said it was £1,000 a day, and as a young English teacher, you don't you barely make £1,000 a month.
Right.
And so I just went for the audition for the sort of why the fuck not of it all. I'd read this book by Danny Wallace called The Yes Man, about a depressed man who decides to say yes to absolutely everything in life, and he documents how it changes his world. And I decided to say yes to everything apart from anal, which I have not said yes to, and I don't think I ever will. But
hey, it might open up your world in a whole new way.
I don't know. I just don't want to open that up ever. But other than that, I decided to say yes to everything, and going to that audition was kind of like part of that experiment. And so I owed Danny Wallace probably quite a lot of money for writing that book, because that has led to every decision I've ever made. So I got the gig. A week later, I was live on television, not knowing myself how I knew all of the cues, how I was able to read a teleprompter. It felt so natural to me, and I had never done anything like that before, and it was because of all of the television, the inhuman hours I'd put into studying television without realising it. I had almost via osmosis ingested the ability to perform on camera. It's so weird. And so that led to a radio career. After I'd done that kind of for a couple of years, I decided I wanted to step away from the camera because I was tired of being reduced to nothing more than my aesthetic. So I moved on to the radio, where I would be able to prove that I can actually be a broadcaster, and that went really well, and I made history as the first woman to ever be given the official chart, which is our Billboard 100, which has been on air for 60 years and never been given to a woman, which is so weird and sad, but thanks. I did that for a couple of years. That went really well, and I really enjoyed it, and I have huge respect and love for the BBC, but I was still restless. I still had more that I wanted to do, and in the United Kingdom, especially even 6 years ago, I mean, still now there isn't much, but diversity is still such a problem, and female in interesting roles and jobs for women are still few and far between, and you know, we still have a competition called Rear of the Year in England.
Rear of the Year.
Rear of the Year, yeah. And you know, you've got a woman women of all ages, 16 to 60, like showing off their bum, and these are broadcasters who've worked really hard to get to where they are, being reduced to their buttocks, which, you know, maybe that's your vibe, that's cool, I'm not judging that, but that wasn't for me. And I didn't want to have to become a reality TV star and go on like a dancing show. I didn't want to do any of those things. For me personally, I wanted to be able to have the career that I deserved. And every time I'd come over to America, I'd turn on the television and you had curvaceous African-American women in their 50s hosting huge Good Morning shows, and you had people of all race and colour and sexuality on these big mainstream shows, and so my heart was calling for America. And also I wanted to be a writer, and in England you're very much so told to stick to your lane. It's like either you're a host, or you're an actor, or you're a writer, or you're a DJ. You can't be a multi-hyphenate, whereas in America they see they hear multi-hyphenate and they just start seeing dollar signs everywhere. And I like that and respect that about America. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's fun.
And you are an example of kind of building your own empire in all these different ways, which I think is hugely inspiring.
Thank you.
And so I was toying with the idea of leaving, but I was also had that typical fear, which I think especially hits women, of like, you're lucky to be in any room that you're in. There's only room for one, and you are the chosen one, and if you give it up, someone else will take your spot, and then you are buggered. And so I had not been honouring that feeling of unrest in me and a lack of stimulation, and then a doctor found a lump in my breast, and it was huge, and I had a week to find out whether it was cancer or not. I kind of get these every decade. I get a huge health scare that kicks me up the arse. So the car accident had been the one 10 years ago, then this one was, 10 years later. And in that week, I made a list, a bucket list, a fuck it list, if you will, you can bleep that out,
Sure.
of everything that I would do if it turned out not to be cancer. And the number one thing was move to California. And I had no plan, no visa, no agents, no nothing. And I'd lost all of my money trying to set up I'd basically given a lot of my money away to charity. And so I really didn't have a lot going for me at this time other than the profile that I'd built up in the United Kingdom. But a week later, I found out I did not have cancer. I had to have an operation, and 6 weeks to that date, you can fly. So that was the day that I flew out on a one-way ticket to America with all of my bags and no idea what I was going to do, nowhere to live.
And this was what, a couple of years ago?
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah, that's around the time that we met.
2015, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd written this pilot that got sent to 3 Arts by a friend just to see if anyone would want to represent me, and they did. And they signed to me as a writer, and we started developing this project, and then this audition for The Good Place came up, and I was kind of out of cash at this point, so sort of looking to host or do something. I didn't think it would be acting, but I was, I was kind of pressured by my agents and managers to go for this audition.
I'll do radio, I'll do anything.
Yeah. And so my agents and managers forced me to go to this audition for The Good Place, even though I was so certain that I couldn't act, because I'd never tried before and didn't think I deserved to be in that position. But I went, and Mike Schur is a very strange man, and he gave me, a complete novice, the job.
Wow.
And so now I am an actor on The Good Place.
Amazing.
And I've almost kind of completed all of my multi-hyphenates.